Many organizations are striving to improve their approach to neurodiversity, revising hiring practices, offering flexible work arrangements, and creating more accommodations. But without one key foundation, those efforts often stall or fall short. In this episode, I will break down why psychological safety, not policy or process, is the key to neuroinclusion. Hi, I'm Dr. Teresa Haskins, and welcome to Think Differently, the podcast that challenges the status quo and explores the power of neurodiversity to create a more inclusive and accessible world. Together, we will talk about everything from the value of different perspectives to the limitless potential of human beings. We'll explore how embracing differences can lead to endless possibilities and how you can maximize strengths to make a positive impact on the world. So sit back, relax, and join me as we get ready to think differently. When you hear the word neuroinclusion, what usually comes to mind? Most people think about minds that work differently, about thoughts that don't fit neatly into traditional molds, especially in education and the workplace. And that's not wrong. But what I often come back to, especially in rooms where we're talking about neurodiversity, is this. What are the foundational elements that need to be in place for inclusion to actually work? Too often, we're focused only on getting people in the door, opening hiring pipelines for autistic or ADHD individuals, changing recruiting processes, adjusting interviews. All of that matters. But when you really break it down, why people, anyone, neurotypical or neurodivergent, leave a workplace or don't stay at a company, it always comes down to one thing: management. It comes down to how someone felt on the team, whether they were included or excluded, supported or ignored. And this always leads me back to one core idea: psychological safety. We're now in October, which is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And while it may not be celebrated as loudly this year, there are still agencies, governments, and companies actively trying to do better. And I recently had the privilege of speaking at a statewide event in Ohio focused entirely on inclusive employment. They brought me specifically to talk about neuroinclusion, and it was refreshing. The room was filled with HR leaders, vocational rehabilitation counselors, EEO officers, and state program staff, people who wanted to engage differently with neurodivergent staff and clients. They wanted real tools: how to navigate accommodation pushbacks, how to think critically about remote work and flexibility, how to separate fact from fear-based opinion. But before we can ever dive into the how, before we can ask whether remote work or any accommodation is the right solution, I always ask this: is your environment even ready for this change? Because all the right strategies will fall flat if your motivation is compliance and not care. Neurodiversity should be part of every workplace conversation. And if we believe that, then the question becomes, what are the table stakes? What must already be in place? Because neurodivergent people aren't some future hire. They're already here. Some are thriving, some are surviving, and some are quietly suffering. And it's not about a skill or capability issue. It's about workplace design, systems, processes, norms, the things that were never built with neurodivergent people in mind. And when we think about our training programs, normative communications, our expectations in meetings, how we form job descriptions, and just assumptions about interpersonal interactions like eye contact, small talk, and team building, it continuously brings me back to the concept of psychological safety. It's a term from leadership research popularized by Amy Edmondson back in 1999, and it's one of the most powerful predictors of whether a team will thrive. And at its core, psychological safety is simple. It's the ability to ask questions, share ideas, admit mistakes, give and receive feedback, and ask for help. But the kicker is without fear of punishment or ridicule. And I think this is where we have problems. And you might be thinking, Teresa, what does this have to do with neurodiversity? It has a lot, really everything. When I researched early autism at work programs, the most successful managers, those who were able to hire and retain neurodivergent talent, had created psychologically safe environments, whether they realized it or not. Because here's the thing. For neurodivergent folks to succeed at work, they need to feel safe communicating their needs and asking for support. If there's judgment or ridicule or silent penalties, the talent will not be supported. They're going to leave. It's gone. We like to say that neuroinclusive workplaces are good for everyone, and I believe it. But let's flip it. Workplaces without psychological safety, they don't work well for anyone. That's how I know psychological safety is the foundation, and neuroinclusion is the key for all of us to succeed. When we can create places where asking for help is no longer seen as a weakness, where we get past where one person on the team gets praised while another person's labeled deficient for doing the same exact thing. We need to create places where we value collaboration instead of just rewarding competition. And I want to be clear, there is no team on earth where every person brings the same strengths. We've talked about focusing on strengths and building strong teams. And I say it over and over, but I'm not certain you're hearing me. There is no team on earth where we all have the same strengths. Football teams don't work this way. Soccer teams are not built this way. Orchestras are not built this way. In any team, there's some people that pass the ball, others defend, some lead, some support. That's how a real team works. And we don't call someone difficult because they aren't good at everything. We build around it. We support each other. But in workplaces, we often expect everyone to be everything. It's actually called finding the unicorn. We shouldn't be trying to create imaginary characters to work with. And when we find that somebody doesn't meet some ideological idea, we penalize them. And here's the truth. When I talk about psychological safety, it sounds easy, but it isn't simple because it requires people, leaders, to be better, to be intentional, to be empathetic, to value trust and openness over control and competition, to listen, to understand, to value questions as much as we value answers, for praising those who ask for help just as much as we celebrate those who give it. And right now, I'm telling you, a lot of people do not feel safe at work. And if you do not feel safe at work, you do not have psychological safety. Most workplaces, people do not feel safe admitting when they're struggling or need help. They don't feel safe asking for a deadline extension or saying, I need a quiet space to focus. And this will mean they definitely don't feel safe disclosing they're neurodivergent. But here's what we do know. Neurodivergence is not rare despite what you're being told. By most estimates, 20% of the people around the world are neurodivergent. And many still don't even know they are. Or if they do know, they're not telling you because they don't feel safe doing so, because it's still not fully safe. And not telling you that someone is neurodivergent isn't proof that they don't need support. It's proof that they've learned to hide their needs. Now, some people still push back and they'll be like, Teresa, we can't customize everything. We have to treat everyone the same. If you can't hack it, you don't belong here. But here's a hard truth. Uniformity is not fairness. Fairness is meeting people where they are, removing barriers that don't need to be there, supporting the conditions needed for any person to succeed. At home, we serve different sized portions at the dinner table depending on people's needs. That's normal. That's fair. So is giving someone noise-canceling headphones so they can focus better. So is writing down instructions instead of just verbalizing them once. So is skipping the team happy hour because the environment's overstimulating. None of these things make someone difficult. It makes them human. And there was an initiative that said you should bring your whole self to work. But what if someone's whole self includes a brain that thinks differently than you do? Do you still mean it then? Can they bring their whole self to work? Because I think a lot of inclusion and the talk around it is performative. It's brochures, it's mission statements, It's a 1-hour training during your onboarding so the corporate office can check a box. But real inclusion, it lives in the day-to-day. It's pausing in a meeting so someone can regroup and confirm understanding. It's making space for clarity questions and not making people feel uncomfortable to ask for more information. It's writing a job description based on outcomes and not quippy language. It's not penalizing someone for a lack of eye contact during an interview or if they went on a little bit too long with their story. It's realizing different isn't a problem to fix. It's a perspective to include. And that's neuroinclusive leadership. This is never about lowering standards, but it is about removing artificial ones. Because when we design for neurodivergent folks in mind, we make things better for everyone. Clearer communication, more flexibility, better onboarding, healthier feedback loops, stronger communities and cultures. This is what we call the curb cut effect. The curb cut effect is when we build the ramps for one group, right? Think about the mobility impairments. And then parents with strollers, delivery workers, travelers with suitcases, they all benefit from that curb cut. Neurodiversity is no different. Not too long ago, I was talking to a small business owner who told me about one of their top performing employees. They said they were brilliant, but very unsocial. Meetings were hard for them, small talk even harder. But when they shifted expectations and allowed this employee to communicate more via writing before meetings, allowed them to asynchronously work, the employee flourished. And so much that when the topic was appropriate, he even started mentoring others. And others then began to copy his workflow, starting with pre-meeting readings and then following up with notes after meetings because everybody was able to follow better and engage deeper with the content. Because his issue was never a capability issue. It was a context issue. It was how we were working, not what we were creating. And when you change the context, you can change the outcome. So then you have to ask, then why don't more leaders make these shifts? And I think it's fear. Fear of saying the wrong thing. Fear of setting a precedent they don't want to maintain. Fear of losing control. And for many, it's just fear of change. And that myth of meritocracy, the idea that hard work is all it takes. But if you take a system that wasn't built for your length of stride, no amount of running will ever allow you to catch up. It creates a place where some people get to leisurely walk while others are expected to jump and run to maintain pace. We need to stop blaming individuals for not thriving in systems not designed for them. And we need to start redesigning those systems in ways that everyone can thrive. Look at your team. Look at your workflows. And the real challenge of the week is to be honest about where are the barriers. Where are you making assumptions about who belongs and how work should be done around here? Are you aware of who might be struggling in silence because they've tried to show up authentically once and they were shut down, or worse, ridiculed? Inclusion isn't an add-on. It's not a buzzword. It's not a nice to have. The truth is, I really believe this. Every person wants to go to work and feel like they're being set up for success. No one wants to go to work and fail today. No one wants to feel like an outcast. Everyone wants to be respected and appreciated. And so if people are feeling like they don't belong, that they are failing, that people don't respect them, if you are feeling that way, then your workplace probably isn't ready yet. But that can change because leadership is a competency. It's a skill. You can build it. You can assess it. We can teach it. We can hire for it. And neurodivergent talent? It's not rare. What's rare is a workplace that knows how to support it, cultivate it, and keep it. So let's start to change that. Thank you for listening to this episode of Think Differently. I hope you found our discussion today insightful and thought-provoking. I want to thank Audio Work Studios for their exceptional production and recording support. Without their expertise and dedication, this podcast would not be possible. If you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to share it with others. Your support helps us to reach new audiences and promote neurodiversity in our world. Also, be sure to subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite platform so that you can stay up to date on the latest episodes. We look forward to seeing you again soon on Think Differently.